Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMZ for a new weekend episode. For all the returning viewers, we are very happy you could join us again. And for the new viewers, welcome back. We are so glad to have you here. As always, my request to the new viewers is do access the introduction episode that we have posted in the playlist because that would give you insight into the objective and the motivation behind the channel and the podcast. If you like the content, I would request you to click like. And if you want to be informed when the future episodes get posted, I would request you to click subscribe. And lastly, if you enjoy the content and know of a fellow Ghalib fan who would enjoy it, I would request you to share this content. That would be much appreciated. All this only and only if you want to do it. So let's get into today's Ghazal. Today we are going to get into Ghazal 7 from Diwan-e-Ghalib. As always, I will read the full Ghazal first and then we will get into the impressions verse by verse. So this is how it goes. मतला अर्ज किया है, धमकी में मर गया जो न बab-e-nabard था, धमकी में मर गया जो न bab-e-nabard था, ishq-e-nabard-pesha talabgar-e-mard था जिंदगी में मर्ग का खटका लगा हुआ, था जिंदगी में मर्ग का खटका लगा हुआ, उड़ने से पेश-tar भी मेरा रंग जर्द था, तालीफ-ए nuskha-ha-e-wafa कर रहा था मैं, तालीफ-ए nuskha-ha-e-wafa कर रहा था मैं, majmua-e-khayaal अभी फर्द फर्द था, दिल ता जिगर की sahil-e-dariya-e-khuun है अब, दिल ता जिगर की sahil-e-dariya-e-khuun है अब, इस रहगुजर में jalwa-e-gul आगे गर्द था, जाती है कोई कश्मकश अंदोह-ए-ishq की, जाती है कोई कश्मकश अंदोह-ए-ishq की, दिल भी अगर गया तो वही दिल का दर्द था, अहबाब चारासाजी-ए-वहसत ना कर सके, अहबाब चारासाजी-ए-वहसत ना कर सके, जिंदान में भी ख्याल bayaban-naward था। मक्ता अर्ज किया है, ये लाश-ए-बे-कफन असद ए-khasta-jaan की है, ये लाश-ए-बे-कफन असद ए-khasta-jaan की है, हक मगफिरत करे अजब आज़ाद मर्द था। It's a beautiful ghazal. It's a beautiful ghazal where Ghalib captures two things. Number one, what are the prerequisites of being a lover? And number two, what is the price you have to pay for it? And in his own unique style, he introduces visualizations in his poetry which are par excellence, and one gets the message loud and clear. So let's get into the first verse. धमकी में मर गया जो ना bab-e-nabard था. The one who lacked courage, the fighter who lacked courage, died at the first threat. ishq-e-nabard-pesha talabgar-e-mard था. To be a fighter for love required a real man with courage. So that's the literal translation of the couplet. Approximate literal translation of the couplet. Now getting into the impression of it. So in his typical style, Ghalib brings in this first verse the much talked about, much written about, much discussed topic of how love and courage go hand in hand. There's an almost symbiotic relationship between them. There's a coexistence. Both these emotions enjoy. One leads to the other. One is required for the other. And that is what I think Ghalib beautifully captures by giving this example of a warrior or a contestant or somebody who is wanting to fight the battle of love. So this is where he is actually capturing the prerequisites of getting into the arena of love. If you are the type of a warrior, if you are the type of a fighter who will run or fall dead at the first threat, at the first sign of danger, at the first inkling of fear, you are not meant. You are not meant to fight this battle of love. Because the battle of love requires, waits, needs a fighter who is a real man with courage. You need to have courage and bravery to get into the battle of love. And like I said, this is not the first time we have heard about this, and a lot of people have talked about this. And while I was researching for it, I came across some quotes which I thought were so well tied to this first couplet from this ghazal. And hence I'm going to share them with you so that you can enjoy them too. This first one is from Nathaniel Hawthorne. All brave men love, for he only is brave who has affections to fight for. What a beautiful thought, and so in sync with this first couplet. Another quote by Cicero. No man can be brave who considers pain the greatest evil of life. And this is again pretty much a prerequisite for being a lover, which Ghalib captures in his poetry so many times, in so many ways, that if you are of the mindset that pain is something evil, pain is something unnatural, pain is something you should avoid, pain is something you should camouflage, subdue, and pain is something you should not indulge in. It's an unnatural phenomena. It is an unnatural state. That's not how it is supposed to be. If you're from that mindset, do not get into the arena of love. Because Ghalib, one of his qualities that mesmerize me and have made me, one of the qualities that have made me such a big fan is how he exalts and rejoices in the pain associated with loving. He doesn't shun it away. He doesn't shy from it. He doesn't hide it. Another quote. Love, like fortune, favors the bold. I just love it. I just love it. This is again so beautiful. Love, like fortune, favors the bold. And then this one is by Laozi. Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. Again, hand in hand, that coexistence between love and courage, very beautifully captured in this one. Now, this quote is by Maya Angelou. Love recognizes no barriers, It jumps hurdles, leaps fences, penetrates walls to arrive at its destination full of hope. What I loved about this quote was arrive at its destination full of hope, despite everything, despite and in spite everything that it has gone through or is put through, arrives at the destination with hope intact. Another prerequisite for love. And then this one, an act of courage is always an act of love. Paulo Coelho. So basically, so many writers, so many poets have written about this symbiotic relationship between love and courage, and I think Ghalib just reinstates, reiterates, re-emphasizes that fact in this first couplet. Moving on to the second one. था जिंदगी में मर्ग का खटका लगा हुआ. Throughout my life, I lived with the suspicion and doubt of death. उड़ने से पेश-tar भी मेरा रंग zard था. Even before I died, my pallor was that of a dead man, of a corpse. So that's the literal translation, approximate literal translation. But let's get into the impression. And I think this couplet, in addition to being heartbreaking, captures this one thing that Ghalib writes about again and again. Ghalib details many a times in his poetry how sorrowful he was about the fact that life shortchanged him. Not in the sense that life did not give him a lot of joys and did not give him a lot of luxury and stability and security. No, life shortchanged him in the fact that it did not allow Ghalib time to feel alive. The endings, the misfortunes, the losses, the deaths of wishes, aspirations came at him so fast and so early in life that there was little to no room where he felt alive. And that I think he captures many a times as a misfortune, a bad kismat, that he lived most of his life under the shadow of death. And death, in addition to the literal death, also the metaphorical death of, like I said, just the lack, the loss, the death, and the ending of good things, good wishes, dreams that never took off, that never got a chance to even start. They were nipped in the bud. Many things were nipped in the bud, and that is where Ghalib laments in his poetry that at least you should have allowed the color to develop before stealing it away. At least life should have given me the time and opportunity to develop a healthy pallor before turning it into a deathly pallor. But no, it did not. It did not give me the opportunity to even feel alive before it started raining on me these misfortunes, these multitude of deaths, these endings, the sorrow, the grief. So that is what he's capturing in this couplet, that throughout my life there was this nagging doubt and suspicion of a death, an end, uh, a nipping in the bud of something. All the time I was living under the fear of this. uh, what will I lose today? What will end today? What will die today? What will finish today? This was a perpetual mental state I lived my living days in, and that, I think, Ghalib thinks is the biggest unfairness, that he had to live his life under the fear of death. Everybody fears death when death comes, but living day in, day out under the fear of death, that's no living. That's no living. And according to Ghalib, throughout his life, this was his perpetual state. And then, of course, he says that even before my soul took flight, basically, even before I died, when I was alive, the deathly pallor was obvious for everybody to see. It was evident. It had already developed. It had already developed. And there's a share that comes to mind, which Ghalib's share, which captures this again very well. So this is how the share goes. कैदे हयात ओ बंदे गम, असल में दोनों एक हैं. मौत से पहले आदमी गम से नजात पाए क्यों? So this is where Ghalib is saying that this prison of life and the sorrows, the chains of sorrow. So the prison of life and chains of sorrow are pretty much the same thing. So he is saying life is synonymous with sorrows. If you're alive, you're sorrowful. And he says that is why there is no respite. There is no respite from this before death. There is no respite from this before death. You will live your life in a sorrowful state. Then there's another share in which he says that मौत का एक दिन मुयन है, नींद तुम्हें क्यों रात भर नहीं आती. So again the share clearly says that you know that death will come once. There will be this one day that is marked to die, when you will die. There is one day in this entire life that is marked for death. Why do you spend every night in fear of it then? Why do you spend every night lying awake in fear of it, dreading it? And that was again the perpetual state of Ghalib's life. Every day was like that. Very heartbreaking. Beautifully written share. Moving on to the next one. तालिफाए nuskha-ha-e-wafa कर रहा था मैं, majmua-e-khayaal abhi fard fard था. So when I was researching around this one, there are various interpretations that I came across, but being true to the inspiration of this podcast, I will share the impression that comes through to me, and you can decide for yourself whether this is how it comes across to you. So तालिफ़ाए nuskha-ha-e-wafa kar raha tha main. Talif is manuscript, compilation of a manuscript. And then nuskha-ha-e-wafa. Nuskha, the literal translation is prescription. Prescription. Wafa is, the literal translation is loyalty, but by extension love. Love and being loyal to love. Kar raha tha main. So in the first line, Ghalib says that I have been forever compiling this manuscript in my head, which is a prescription for love. And then in the second line he says, majmua-e-khayaal abhi fard tha. Majmu is again kind of a musing, again a compilation, and khayaal is thoughts. So he's saying the thoughts are still a little scattered, the musings are still a little scattered, but the compilation of this manuscript for prescription of love, I have been doing it in my head for a while now. And like I said, I read some interpretations where they skimmed over the nuskha word. Now, nuskha just stuck with me because why did he use nuskha? Nuskha by literal translation means prescription. Now, if there is a prescription, then there is a disease. The prescription will be given to alleviate some kind of pain, suffering, disease. And that is what I find very interesting. So Ghalib is putting together a manuscript, has been putting together a manuscript, collating thoughts for a manuscript forever. A manuscript that is supposed to be a prescription for love. And I do genuinely believe that he means prescription here, because Ghalib's poetry is not primarily focused on the joys of love. Ghalib's poetry is primarily focused on the pain and sorrow associated with love. That's where the difference is. So whatever he was compiling, that he is capturing in this couplet, was not simply about love. It was actually about alleviating the pain, the suffering, the grief love causes. That's why it's a prescription for love. And Ghalib's poetry is that. It is a balm for the broken-hearted. It is a balm for someone who is going through loss, grief, anxiety, pain related to love. Because Ghalib, through his poetry, inspires you to indulge in these emotions. Ghalib, through his poetry, communicates this is deserving of your attention, your ardor, your appreciation, your affection. This pain and grief is as deserving as the joys and happiness of love. Do not shun the pain and grief of love away. It is part of the overall experience. You cannot appreciate the joy and the happiness love brings if you ignore, shun, or belittle the pain, the loss, the anxiety it brings with it. So I think that is where the beauty of this couplet is. That Ghalib is saying that I am an expert lover, which actually means I've been through the pain and the grief and the loss love brings. For Ghalib, the expertise of loving did not lie in the fact that you loved and you got loved in return. The expertise or the caliber of a lover actually lied in the fact how much you could take in terms of unrequited love and pain and grief and loss, and still keep the hope alive, still keep the emotion, the jazba of love alive. Moving on to the next couplet. दिल ता जिगर की sahil-e-dariya-e-khuun hai ab. From my heart to my liver, there is almost a bank running, along which a river of rich red blood flows. Approximate translation of that first line. Second line. इस रहगुजर में jalwa-e-gul आगे गर्द था. Along this path, what started as a magnificent red color akin to a red blossoming flower would, down the path, slowly but surely turn to dust. Approximate translation again of the second line. Now let's get into the impression this brings to mind. So, first of all, the technicality again. He was so technical. I just love that. Dil ta jigar, from the heart to the liver. Now, anatomically, we have some major arteries, and one of them runs from the heart and provides blood to many organs. So, in essence, in the first line, Ghalib is trying to capture currently, because the first line ends with ab, which means now. So now, at this point in time, currently, there is a beautiful, rich, red stream of blood flowing from my heart to my liver, as if a river of red is flowing along its banks, gurgling, full, rich. And the way it comes across to me is Ghalib is saying currently the body is working fine. The body is alive. The blood is pumping in the veins. The blood is flowing the way it is supposed to flow. The body is in a healthy condition. And this is probably the state when you're falling in love. Everything is charged up. Everything feels very alive, very joyous, brimming, gurgling, just like a river. And then in the second line he says, along this path, along this bank, along this river, which starts as this rich, red magnificence, akin or similar to a red blossoming flower, I know as Ghalib that down this path, this magnificent red color will slowly but surely turn to the color of dust. Again, just even, and that song eludes me, but the lyrics are something like, even when I was falling in love with her, I was thinking of leaving her. Something like that, but I'm totally forgetting the song. But that's what comes to mind. Even when Ghalib is in the throes of falling in love, in the throes of feeling alive and experiencing the newness of love and passion, where the whole body is just fully alive, he knows, he can already visualize, he's aware that down this path, this alive quality of life will change. It will change. And slowly and steadily, as the passion and the newness of love ebbs, the difficulties and the challenges and the strife and the anxiety and the pain and the grief will start coming into play. And the red color will slowly but steadily transform and take up the color of dust. Now, because he has used the word dust, and this is Ghalib, every word, every syllable, everything is intentional. There are no flukes. There is nothing extra. This is a poet who captures a million things in 2 lines. So if he has used dust, there is a reason for that. He could easily say that the red-colored rose will fade, but saying that the red-colored rose, which he has already in the ghazal drawn a parallel with blood, and then saying that it will turn to dust, what comes to mind is ashes to ashes, dust to dust. He is talking about death. He is talking about finishing of life. So according to him, it has started beautifully. It is in this magnificent red color, this entire state I am in, but I do know that there is an end to this. There is an end when this red color will wither away, fade away, and what will be left is dust. Going with open eyes into the transaction of love, knowing fully well that the honeymoon period will end. It will never stay this exuberant and alive forever, knowing fully well that this will transform, this will change, because love will inevitably with it bring the loss and the pain and the ends and the grief. Moving on to the next one. जाती है कोई कश्मकश अंदोह-ए-इश्क की. Do you ever see the sorrows of love leave? And second line, दिल भी अगर गया तो वही दिल का दर्द था. Even if you lose your heart to someone, that itself becomes a cause of pain for the heart. Beautiful couplet. So clear about his so clear about the reality of love. That's what I like about it. So clear about the reality of love. So let's get into the impressions. जाती है कोई कश्मकश अंदोह-ए-इश्क की. Almost a question. Do we ever get rid of the sorrow of love? Is there a way out? Does this ever end? Almost a question. And then in the next line he says, दिल भी अगर गया तो वही दिल का दर्द था. दिल भी अगर गया. If you were to lose your heart to someone, which by extension means if you were to fall in love with someone, if you were to try again. If you were to fall in love with someone, वही दिल का दर्द था. That itself becomes a reason for pain. If you lose your heart to someone, that itself becomes a cause for pain for the heart. So by extension he's saying, of course initially you don't love anyone, and that itself comes with its set of pain. You do want to love someone, right? If you don't, then you are going through the pains of loneliness and waiting and disillusionment that you will not find anyone. Now comes the stage when you actually find someone and you fall in love with them. Is that a source of joy? No, because now starts the new cycle of loving someone and by extension giving them the power to hurt you. And a new set of anxiety and pain and sorrow. Now, if that person loves you back, good, but they still have the power to hurt you. And if they don't love you back, then you land up with the pain and sorrow of unrequited love. So Ghalib is just very realistically, very matter of fact, in a matter of fact way, putting this across that do not look for a scenario where there will be no pain and grief and anxiety and suffering. Do not play the game of love if that's what you're looking for, because there's a very good chance that that's not gonna happen. One way or the other, there will be some sorrow associated with love. Be aware of it and play the game. Don't come to the arena thinking this is a battle you will win and there will be no sorrow, grief, pain in that victory. Beautiful. Moving on to the next one. Ahbab chaarasazi-e-wahshat na kar sake. Ahbab, well-wishers, physicians, psychiatrists, learned people. It's a collective. Chaarasazi-e-wahshat, treatment of my madness. Na kar sake, could not do. So all the well-wishers, physicians, psychiatrists could not cure my madness. Second line, zindan mein bhi khayaal bayaban-naward tha. Even in confinement, my thoughts ran amok. I had no control on them. So, getting into the impression of this, in olden times, this comes across in Ghalib's poetry, but otherwise also, in olden times, if there was someone who started to express an intense emotion, either through intense actions or intense vocalization, surrounding love, passion for another person, the culture and the society of those times was very quick to put the label of crazy or mad on that person. Literature, poetry, history are full of examples of lovers or couples, of which one was labeled mad just because of their obsession and passion, the intensity of it. So it almost seems that society at that time was almost used the mad label as an excuse to get rid of anyone who would perhaps make them uncomfortable by the sheer intensity of their emotion. And intense emotions, one of the most common intense emotions is love and passion for someone. And so in a few ghazals that Ghalib has penned, he admits to the fact that he is crazy or mad, admits to the fact that he has resigned to the label of crazy and mad that has been put on him, and invited or allowed these so-called well-wishers and healers to come in and work on him to see whether they can make a difference. And that's exactly what's happening in this share also, where Ghalib is saying that these people came and tried whatever they had in their arsenal, but they could not treat it. The so-called madness of Ghalib, the so-called crazy of Ghalib, they could not treat it. And in the second line, he says zindan. Now, zindan is confinement, isolation. And that's another thing which is so sad but true. So, they were very quick to label people crazy and mad per their convenience. But they really did not have many solutions to offer or treatments to offer. It was almost as if labeling them mad and crazy was just a prerequisite that needed to be fulfilled so that these people could be then isolated or kept away from the normal, so-called normal people, right? The so-called normal people who became very uncomfortable in the face of intense emotion or obsession or passion. So Ghalib says that zindan, so even in my confinement, even in the isolation, my thoughts still ran amok. My feelings still ran amok. I could not control them. They were as crazy, as obsessed, as intense, as irrational, illogical, if you may, per the worldly standards. Nothing happened. I mean, they were still the chaos of my mind, the chaos of my heart still ran rampant. This confinement and these so-called healers, etc., didn't make even a single dent in it. What touches my heart is the fact that that he does say that he does reach a stage where he resigns to the fact that, okay, fine, I am crazy, I am mad, go ahead, do your thing, your treatment or whatever you have. And the only thing they offer him is confinement. And Ghalib says that in the confinement, I can attest to the fact nothing has changed. What I feel, I still feel. What I think, I still think. What I obsess about, I still obsess about. What I'm passionate about, I'm still passionate about. What was intense is still intense. Moving on to the last couplet, Makta. ये लाश-ए-बे-कफन असद-ए-खस्ता-जहाँ की है, हक मगफिरत करे अजब आज़ाद मर्द था. Beautiful share. Usually maktas are, the last couplet usually is, but again, so the first line, ye lash-e-be-kafan asad-e-khasta-jaan ki hai. This corpse, devoid of a shroud, belongs to Ghalib's tattered soul. Second line, हक मगफिरत करे अजब आज़ाद मर्द था. May God forgive Ghalib. He was one of his kind. He was a free spirit. Now, the impression of this couplet is very, very impactful. And to understand it in its totality, I did some research because the first line, lash-e-be-kafan, so a corpse without a shroud. So it does seem like something which is abnormal. That's not how it's supposed to be. A corpse should be shrouded. But then I did some, I did some research, and this is what I've found. So, there is a huge significance of shrouding. Yes, it is part of the usual burial procedures, but per the Islamic religion rituals, the after death rituals, the three main, the three absolute must, the three mandatory rituals done after death are ghusl, which is washing of the body, kafan, which is shrouding of the body, and dafan, which is burying of the body. You cannot eliminate, skip, or in any way do away with these three basic rituals. And of course, there are sub rituals under these which are also to be done. But primarily, basic 101 of burial consists of ghusl, kafan, and dafan. And here Ghalib says, ye lash-e-be-kafan, this corpse without kafan. And that has a huge, huge impact. So Ghalib is in this couplet capturing the fact how far away from the required tradition, how far away from the required ritual, how far away from the mandated ritual he is when he says his corpse is be-kafan. And of course, one of the main objectives of shrouding a corpse stems from the fact that you want to be very respectful of the corpse. The shrouding is done to respect the corpse, cover it with respect, and make it such that the loved ones, the well-wishers, the people who have come to grieve are able to pay their respects in a respectful manner. The corpse is supposed to be prepared for that in great detail. And to say that I am devoid of that captures first of all, it captures the taboo nature of the whole scenario. This is not how it is supposed to be. This is not how it is supposed to be. And then secondly, it captures just the nakedness, the bare bone nakedness Ghalib is trying to capture of his soul in this couplet. So Ghalib has arrived at the doors of heaven and is having a conversation with God. I just love the way he converses with God. He does it in many ghazals. It's such a one-on-one conversation. So God, here I am, and excuse me for coming to your door naked, even without the elementary kafan which every corpse has who comes to your door. Every single corpse has it because it is mandated. But God, here I am without it. And let me explain. Asad e-khasta-jaan ki, because I am Asad, the soul that had a very, very tattered life. The soul that was tormented by life. The soul that lived a life of lack. strife, grief, pain, loss. And that is why God, I have just barely made it to your door. Life has been so hard, things have been so bad. I am so depleted of energy and resources. I'm hanging by a thread here, and I've just made it to your door. And yes, there is no kafan. There was no time. There were no resources. There was no opportunity for me to indulge in the regular rituals, respect, care that a corpse enjoys. I did not have that opportunity. I did not have that. And then in the second line he says, Hak magifrat kare. Hak magifrat kare. So Hak is God, the omnipotent, the Almighty. Magfirat kare, excuse it, pardon it. So God, pardon this almost audacity of me to arrive at your door devoid of even a kafan, devoid of the mandated, elementary, basic kafan. Basically arriving at your door naked. Excuse me for this, pardon me for this, absolve me of this. And then he ends it by saying, Ajab Azad Mard tha. Again, like I said, I like the way he talks to God. So if you have gone through the first episode, the same style of conversation he has with God, where he pays homage to him, ode to him, but then also in parallel shares an opinion he has about God's handiwork. A slight critique of God's handiwork. So something akin to that. So here he is firstly asking God to forgive him, absolve him of the sin that he has committed, of arriving at his door devoid of a shroud. But he continues to say, but God, keep in mind, this is the soul of a free man. This is the soul of a free man. Despite what life threw at him, despite the chains and shackles he had to live in, despite all the limitations, despite all the pain and the loss and the endings and the multitude of deaths he suffered, this soul is that of a free man. This is a free soul. And by extension, he means freedom of thought, expression, emotion, passion, obsession, love, pain. So I just like his style. So he is asking for forgiveness, but then he's also telling God, and while you consider my sin and deliberate whether you will absolve me of them or not, do keep in mind this is the soul of a free man. This is a free soul. So it would be nice if you could absolve me and set me free from this sin also, because this indeed is the soul of a free man. Beautiful, beautiful. Ghalib at his best. So that brings us to the end of this ghazal. I do sincerely hope that you enjoyed the impressions of it, and I look forward to getting into the next ghazal in the next episode. Till then, everybody, love and light to you. Thanks for watching.